What's up, guys? This is Jay from Revolution Radio, and I wanted to talk about some positive things that happened today, Friday, the 20th of September. The reason why I want to start off with positive is because there's a lot of negative, the backside of this. So, enjoy the inspirational things about today. First up, I want to start with the climate strike. That protest did happen today, and it was phenomenal. We saw upwards near 60,000 people assemble in New York and hundreds of thousands all over. It's really important to understand why this was so important. The biggest part is because it was organized and led by our youth. And it shows that our youth is engaged and they care. I can say, I don't know, decades ago, that was not the case. Not by the numbers that it is now. And now our teenagers and children, they have cell phones and they have computers and the internet, and they're using it right for the most part. But they're using it to check facts. They're done with Facebook. They're not they're not like some people in their 40s and 50s who that's what they use it for. No, they understand the tool that they have in front of them, that it's not just for entertainment. And I think that's really cool and interesting. And the reason why I say that they know how to use this stuff, is because most of the kids aren't even on simple formats like Facebook. Many of them are on Twitter and Instagram, where one of the big things that is popular on Twitter today is a climate strike. And many millennials and younger are talking about what they want to do and what should happen. They're bringing forth plans to make changes. Meanwhile, we have people like Sean Hannity, who is complaining that they're doing this. And he said, well, protesting never changed anything. Well, I completely disagree with that. I really do. But even if it doesn't give you a automatic response like he wants, or that he's alluding it won't, it starts a conversation, and that conversation starts action. That action will then affect legislation, and finally things will happen. His argument to it was, well, I remember when they did protests for peace. Well, we're not at peace, are we? No. No, Sean, we're not. Um, and that sucks. I wish we did. I wish it did work. But there are certain things that are fairly unattainable, and peace being one. Especially when you hand that responsibility off to people who make money off of war. But what really gets me about Sean Hannity and knocking the climate strike protest is the fact that he didn't come up with his own idea. He says, look, you're a bunch of children who are plugged in and you are engaged in our situation and in our society. And instead of either A, just ignoring you because, I don't know, Sean Hannity's in his 60s, should probably just shut up. Or B, saying, look, it's a fantastic idea, whatever, but here's what we need to do. No, he didn't do either one. He just crapped on their idea, crapped on the whole protest thing, made fun of it, and then walked away. And one thing that I want to get my listeners and everyone else in on this is, I'm done having debates with anyone who doesn't bring a debate to the table. If their debate is just to say you're wrong and they have nothing, you win. I don't care what you're bringing to the table. If they are not bringing an idea, you win the debate. Because I'm me personally anyway, I'm done having these debates with people who just say, no, it won't work. No, you're wrong. Well, what's your idea? Well, I don't got one. Well, then shut up. Shut your mouth if you don't have an idea. Um, there's a great man once said that it takes a strong, wise, and great man to build a barn, and it takes one jackass to kick it down. But nevertheless, we had these kids out there who were engaged, and they led this amazing protest, and it was fantastic, and it made you think, I have a lot of hope for the future, and I'm happy and excited, and the millennials and even Generation X are good parents because they raise some good kids. Um, the other thing about these kids, they've been targeting the Prime Minister of Canada, and Trudeau, and his actions, which it's hard to say. How do you spin that into a good thing? You don't. You don't. The action that he committed, no. The fact that it was 2001, it's still rough. It really is still rough because it wasn't any more acceptable then than it is now, or even prior to that. If this had been 91, maybe 2001 though, nah, we weren't cool with that. Um, Even 91, I would argue that was not cool, but the further back you go, the more you can find. Meh, I get it, but not 2001. No, what I find inspiring about the whole thing, and really it was Bo of the Fifth Column who he talked about it today, and so I kind of got looking into it. Children are talking about this, and understand that I am glad that they acknowledge that blackface is wrong, and they know that though. The thing that's inspiring is they are having geopolitical conversations about other governments and people in these other governments. That's amazing. When I was 13, all I talked about, I think, was superheroes and where to get the best lubricant. I don't know. It definitely wasn't other other governments. It definitely wasn't other leaders. I couldn't have named who the foreign prime minister of Canada was. And granted, Trudeau's a fairly famous guy, but I'm also in my mid 30s now, so things kind of change. I honestly don't know if I would have known who the Canadian Prime Minister was when I was 18. But these 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, they do. This gives me a lot of hope for the future, and I think that's awesome. So, what do the old people do in our country? Look, nah, I'm not being an ageist. Like, I'm a Bernie fan, so it's not about age. Uh, but here's what the Republicans, the president, however you want to, the war machine, Raytheon, everyone who's paid by defense contractors, this is what we did. We responded, and I've been saying this all week for anyone who listens. I knew this would happen. But the U.S. announced Friday it would send additional troops to Saudi Arabia and to the United Emirates in response to the attack on Saudi oil facilities, which the U.S. blamed on Tehran, describing the attack as a dramatic escalation of Iranian aggression. Mark Esper, told reporters at the Pentagon that the troops would be defensive in nature and primarily focused on air and missile defense. Fair enough. The thing is we have no proof, and we've seen this before. For those who remember 2001, which is not you 13, 14-year-olds, but we do remember this. In fact, at 18 years old, I remember this. We know it was Iraq. Iraq, Saddam, they were responsible for 9/11. No, they're not. Well, they harbored terrorists. Not that did 9/11. We're going after Iraq. We're still in Iraq. Um, we got nothing. We have no proof that Iran is attacking Saudi Arabia or the oil fields. Um, the Houthi have said over and over that they're the ones who did it. I have a little bit of news on them. But no, and here's what's the interesting thing is we said it's Iran. And we've already said that this is the problem. Why did we have to say it was Iran if we're sending our military in as kind of defense? What would it matter to anyone? I mean, to the average person, and to even to me or anyone who's really plugged in politically, if it was the Houthi or if it was Iran, who cares? If they're playing defense, doesn't matter. And the interesting thing is, as I reported on this show a few days ago, the Houthi have been making attacks for quite a while on Saudi Arabia. But now we want to say, no, it's not Iran, or it's not the Houthi, and we need to send troops in there. Now, the interesting thing is, though, is this came shortly after Saudi Arabia told Trump that they needed our troops there. So our men and women are going to die protecting Saudi Arabia. We're mercenaries. That's really what we are. A very small amount of people are going to get very wealthy off the corpses of poor Americans. That's the way it is. There's no other way to look at it. Because here's the thing. We've been selling a ton of arms to Saudi Arabia. They can't defend their own country. Why? How are we any different? How are we going to defend their country better? And the interesting thing is we're not fighting alongside them. We are defending them. Why do they need our help? Millions of dollars in weaponry, and they can't defend it. Of course, we could also ask them, where are those weapons? But we're not interested in that. We're not interested in that at all. We're interested in taking a contract to defend them. Again, like a mercenary state. This also comes down, though, and understand, they announced this. We're going to go play defense against Iran. Iran, again, not saying they're even involved. Following that, very shortly, pretty much at the same time, the Pentagon and Donald Trump made an announcement that they had applied new sanctions. New and stricter sanctions. The new sanctions are on two pillars of the Iranian economy: the country's central bank and its sovereign wealth fund. Days after the attack on Saudi Arabian oil fields that the U.S. has blamed on Tehran, speaking in the Oval Office, Trump said it would be easier for him to launch airstrikes, as some congressional Republicans and other hawks have advocated. Instead, the president cast his decision as taking the harder road and singled later in the day that he's not considering a direct military response at the moment. I think the strong person approach and the thing that shows great strength would be showing a little bit of restraint, he said. describing the penalties that will be applied to Iran's national bank at the highest level. Um, yeah, I don't think that that's the strongman thing to do, by the way. I think the strongman thing would be to do is to sit down and have negotiations with Iran. Or, even better thing that we could do, and a very, I don't know, smarter, instead of targeting Iran's central bank, is we could find out what the end game is. Understand this. As much as I've been following this situation, I don't know what America's end game is with Iran. Think about it. We pulled out of the nuclear deal. What do we want from Iran? Hmm? I mean, seriously, and I'm not even trying to be a smartass here, but if anyone listening can tell me, that would be fantastic. But I don't see what we're working towards. And that's what bothers me. I've heard someone said trade. What would we want to trade with Iran? I mean, no, that's China, buddy. We're not really oil. No, that's why we're backing Saudi Arabia. That's why we tried to throw a coup in Venezuela, and ultimately we have more oil than anyone. So what do we want? And that's the problem. And I think that's where Iran is as well. What do they give us? They don't know what we want. I'll tell you what we want. We want them to attack us. This is imperialism at its best. This is what we do. We're going to whine and cry and say, oh, they just don't want to negotiate. Well, what are we negotiating? Well, you know what you did. And here's some more sanctions. You can't make any money. We're going to starve your people to death. And we're going to deny medical care because you people won't sit down. Meanwhile, we're not telling them what we want. And they had a deal. They had a deal with our president just 4 years ago. We are the ones who backed out of that, and for no reason. That's the important thing to remember with this whole Iran thing. This was a situation that was taken care of. This isn't North Korea. They weren't testing weapons. They weren't attacking anyone. There hadn't even been mentioned, really, the only thing that they had been doing was supporting the Houthi or the Yemen people. That's it. But we're not mad about that. Or if we are, we're not acting like it. We haven't said anything publicly. What we want is war. That's what we want. Trump may act like we don't. John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, they all might act like they don't want war. And they do a really bad job of acting like it. But the reality is, they want us to be in war. So all of their rich defense contractors, friends, make a lot of money. I can't see another way that this ends. We have given no indication of what we want at all. The only reason, again, with the nuclear peace treaty, we pulled out of that. The only reason they started building more was because we pulled out of it and put sanctions on them. That's it. That was the whole thing. Now, the only way we're going to back out of it, by the way, and I'm not exactly sure about this, but if the whole thing is that Trump just talked himself into a stupid decision with Iran, then we're going to war. I say that because he's never going to admit, oh, well, I'm just going to go back to what Obama had. He's not going to do that. And I wish people would talk him into it and say, oh, we'll call it the Trump-Iran plan, and he'll love it, and we won't be looking at war. But I don't see that happening. Anyway, guys, that's it for Friday. It's Yeah, it is what it is. It's not good. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, concerns. On YouTube, our channel is The Community. And I named it The Community because you guys are the ones. I want your opinions. I want your thoughts. And I want to start a community of ideas. So yeah, on YouTube it's The Community. On Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcast, look up Revolution Radio or Zach Dillon, ZAKKDILLON. On Facebook, J Dillon, JAYDYLAN. Twitter, JC Show VIP. Hit me up at any of those places. Let me know your thoughts. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.